For the years that I held the Christian belief system, I was told on such a frequency that the law was nailed to the cross, and Jesus fulfilled and did away with the law, that I actually believed this was what the Bible read. The whole premise beneath this lie of Christianity is that since Jesus has fulfilled the law, we don't need to obey the law. For some reason, 9 of the 10 commandments and a handful of others are cherry-picked from the Torah to say it's advisable to keep these laws, but hey, if you sin, just ask for forgiveness and carry on living as though you're saved and can never lose that salvation, regardless of how often you repeat the same old sins and ignore all the other laws in the Torah. Now, some might already be thinking, there is a Bible verse about the law being nailed to the cross. So let's take a look at that text and see what it reads. And you, being dead in your trespasses, and the uncircumcision of your flesh, he has made alive together with him, having forgiven you all trespasses, having wiped out the handwriting of requirements that was against us, which was contrary to us, and he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross. Take careful note of the translation here, because this text is not speaking of the law of Yahweh at all, sometimes called the law of Moses. What is nailed to the cross is the handwriting of requirements, or dogmas, that are against us and contrary to us. Reading through the Torah, which most Christians are never recommended to read, we find that the law, or Torah, is given for our good, and is not against us at all. And Yahweh commanded us to observe all these statutes, to revere Yahweh our Elohim for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is this day. Then it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to observe all these commandments before Yahweh our Elohim as he has commanded us. And now, Israel, what does Yahweh your Elohim require of you but to revere Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, to serve Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the commandments of Yahweh and his statutes, which I command you today for your good. Jeremiah writes similarly about the time when Yahweh gathers the scattered tribes of Israel. They shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim, when I give them one heart and one way, that they may revere me forever, for the good of them and their children after them. Even in the New Covenant, James, echoing Psalm 19:7, describes the law in this way: But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty, and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does. So what are the dogmas that stand against us? The answer is again found toward the end of Deuteronomy after the laws in the Torah are described. These handwritings are the curses that result in ignoring and disregarding the laws of Yahweh, something which we have all done. But it shall come to pass, if you do not obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to observe carefully all his commandments and his statutes which I command you today, that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. You're welcome to read the entire chapter for yourself for the details of these curses, but these are the dogmas that stand against us and are contrary to us, that were nailed to the cross. For all have sinned, and we are set free from the consequences of our sin, the curses, for disobeying the laws. This is clarified in Paul's letter to the Galatians, which many Christians misunderstand and attempt to use to claim that the law is annulled. Mashiach, Christ, has redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us, for it is written, Cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. This curse of the law is also referenced in Paul's letters to the Romans when he writes, For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under the law, but under grace. Paul is not speaking of the law or the Torah here, but the law of sin that leads to death, the curse, just as the natural laws of physics dictate that what goes up must come down, If one breaks the laws of the Torah, one is under the curse of death under the law. Paul even continues and writes, "What then? Shall we sin because we are not under the law but under grace? Certainly not. Do you not know that to whom you present yourselves slaves to obey, you are that one's slaves whom you obey, whether of sin leading to death or of obedience leading to righteousness?" This is where Paul defines the dogmas as the curse of the sin leading to death. He also writes something earlier in the book of Romans that should have clarified the point for all those who try and claim the law is irrelevant. Do we then make the law void through faith? Let it not be, but we establish the law. The really offensive thing about the statement that Jesus did away with the law is that Yeshua, the real Hebrew Messiah of Israel, actually said the complete opposite. In one of the most famous discourses in history, Yeshua said, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy but to fulfill. For assuredly, I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled." I don't know about you, but I can still see the earth and heavens out my window, and all is not yet completed. Thus not one yod or tittle has been removed from the law. Yes, Yeshua filled the penalty of sin under death that Paul described, and fulfills the laws appointed to the high priest under the order of Melchizedek. But every yod and tittle of the laws that apply to us as nations grafted into Israel still remains for our obedience. The new covenant for Israel, from Matthew to Revelation, is loaded with scriptures confirming that we are to guard the law and Torah of Yahweh. Here are just a few. "If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love." And it is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one tittle of the law to fail. And when they heard it, they glorified Yahweh, and they said to him, "You see, brother, how many myriads of Jews there are who have believed, and they are all zealous for the law. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, so I worship the Elohim of my fathers, believing all things that are written in the law and in the prophets." Do we then make void the law through faith? Certainly not. On the contrary, we establish the law. Therefore, the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just, and good. Note again how this text confirms yet again that the law is not contrary to us, but for our good. All Scripture is given by inspiration of Elohim, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of Elohim may be complete, thoroughly equipped for every good work. Note that when Paul writes all Scripture, he is referring to the First Testament, the Tanakh here, considering there was no New Testament writings at the time. Now by this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He who says, "I know him," and does not keep his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him. Blessed are those who do his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life, and may enter through the gates into the city. But outside are the dogs, and sorcerers, and sexually immoral, and murderers, and idolaters, and whoever loves and practices a lie. The lie, which is the topic of this video, is that the law is abolished. John makes this super clear for us by defining what sin actually is. Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. Let's have a look at that word lawlessness. The KJV translates this as transgression of the law. Not man's law. Yahweh does not base his judgment on earthly court rules, but on his law, the Torah. The Greek word used for lawlessness in this text is anomia. That's from G458, illegality, violation of the law, and generally wickedness. The most concerning thing to Christians should be that this same word was used when Yahushua replied to those who say, "Lord, Lord." Many will say to me in that day, "Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name?" And then I will declare to them, "I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness." The worst thing about this monstrous lie is that in deceiving billions of seekers of truth, Christianity has robbed them of any opportunity to express their love to Yahweh for all the good he has done. John writes repeatedly that our obedience to the law is our expression of love for Elohim. "If you love me, keep my commandments." For years I was told that keeping the law is a burden and a yoke that Jesus has lifted. Yet again, John writes the exact opposite. By this we know that we love the children of Elohim when we love Elohim and keep his commandments. For this is the love of Elohim, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. This is love, that we walk according to his commandments. This is the commandment that, as you have heard from the beginning, you should walk in it. He who has my commandments and keeps them, it is he who loves me, and he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. For those who might suggest that Yahshua's commands are somehow different than the laws of Yahweh given in the Torah, be reminded that Yahshua said, "My doctrine is not mine, but his who sent me. If anyone wills to do his will, he shall know concerning the doctrine, whether it is from Elohim, or whether I speak on my own authority." He who does not love me does not keep my words, and the word which you heard is not mine, but the Father's who sent me. If you've made it this far, there's a couple more excuses from Christians that I've heard over and over, and one is the misinterpretation of the Jerusalem Council recorded in Acts chapter 15. The excuse given is that Gentiles were given exemption from the law, and only had to observe a couple minor things, but were otherwise not under the same covenant as the Jews, or Israel. And certain men came down from Judea and taught the brethren, "Unless you are circumcised, according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved." But some of the sect of the Pharisees who believed rose up, saying, "It is necessary to circumcise them, and to command them to keep the law of Moses." Now the apostles and elders came together to consider this matter. For starters, most don't even realize the context was regarding the fact that certain men were claiming that Gentiles needed to be circumcised to be saved. The council was therefore called to discuss this very matter, and how it applies in keeping the law of Moses. After all the discussion, the outcome is given in verses 19 to 21, so let's examine this text. "Therefore I judge that we should not trouble those from among the Gentiles who are turning to Elohim, but that we write to them to abstain from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from things strangled, and from blood." What's notable is that there are 4 Old Testament laws given for the Gentiles to obey that are not even part of the popular 10 Commandments. The question should be, why these 4 laws? Because Christians are never recommended to read the Torah, they are devoid of the understanding that the law is the covenant to Israel, and that the promised new covenant is also to Israel. Most Christians are shocked when they read the actual prophecy in Jeremiah of the new covenant. "Behold, the days are coming, says Yahweh, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. The only way a Gentile can enjoy the blessing of being called his people and to be part of the new covenant is by being grafted in to Israel, something that Paul wrote about extensively in Romans chapter 11, and similarly how Ruth, a Moabitess, said, "Your people are my people, and your Elohim my Elohim." The Torah has always made this distinction. One law and one custom shall be for you and for the stranger who dwells with you. Being part of Israel is the reason these 4 laws are given as mandatory for new converts, because failure to guard these commands results in being cut off from Israel. You can't be considered grafted into Israel and then continue to break laws that result in being cut off from Israel. The first is abstaining from pollutions of idols, which is covered in Exodus 20 verse 22, Leviticus 17 verse 7, Deuteronomy 13 verse 17, Deuteronomy 32 verse 21. He who sacrifices to any Elohim except Yahweh only, he shall be utterly destroyed. The second is sexual immorality, covered in Leviticus 17:7, 18, 6-29, Numbers 25, 1-3. None of you shall approach anyone who is near of kin to him to uncover his nakedness. I am Yahweh. For whoever commits any of these abominations, the person who commits them shall be cut off from among their people. The third is what is strangled, or eating with the blood, covered in Genesis 9 verses 4-5 and Deuteronomy 12 verse 23. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Surely for your lifeblood I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it, and from the hand of man. The fourth is eating blood, covered in Leviticus 3 chapter 17, 7:26-27, 17 verses 10-14, Deuteronomy 12 verse 16. And whatever man of the house of Israel, or of the strangers who dwell among you, who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood, and will cut him off from among his people. Most people who read the conclusion of the Jerusalem Council totally miss the 5th law that also results in being cut off from Israel, that is, the Sabbath, and highlights that these 4 laws are only the beginning of learning the Torah. You see, most Gentiles had no clue regarding the laws and commands and how to show their love for Yahweh and follow in the footsteps of Yahshua, which is why the conclusion reads, "For Moses has had throughout many generations those who preach him in every city, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath." The new Gentile converts were expected to go to the assembly every Sabbath and hear Moses, that is, the law of Moses, being read, and obey the rest of the commands. So you see now how this lie has perpetrated itself upon Christianity and deceived billions. For although there are a handful of texts that may appear ambiguous when misinterpreted, there is not one text in the entire Bible that says that any believer in the Messiah is to ignore the law, or that it's fulfilled to the extent that we no longer follow all the commands. Some might genuinely ask, how can I keep all 613 laws? For starters, the 613 total is a rabbinic tradition and in no way matches what the Bible records. A more reasonable number might be closer to 500, but the other more important fact is that the laws are only applicable to whom they are given. The Torah is divided into laws for men, for women, for kings and servants, for farmers and priests, etc. So if you're not a farmer, or a woman, or a servant, those laws don't apply to you. Around 1/3 of the Torah is for priests, And because Yeshua, as our high priest offering in the temple in the heavens, fulfills those laws, that alone leaves 400 or so that are left to divide among men, women, kings and landlords, etc. If you truly love Yahweh, you will re-examine this issue and hopefully find a true expression of your love in your obedience. Imagine you're a newlywed and your spouse writes you a letter on all the things they love and those they don't like. Is not your natural reaction to seek to do all those things that your partner loves and do your best to avoid all those they detest? Thanks be to our Messiah that he does provide an atonement for the times that we do mess up, but to deliberately live in ignorance or dismiss the good laws of our Creator is not the sign of a true follower of the Messiah of Israel. I trust these scriptures have given you something to consider, so please study this issue and no longer live in doomed ignorance. May Yahweh bless you as you seek to obey.